My mom sold my childhood home while I was still living there. I smelled the cardboard before I saw it. Wet corrugation, the kind that leaks newsprint ink and memories at the same time. I was still in my car, the engine ticking down, wondering why a moving truck, bright orange, roaring like a bad joke, was parked in front of the only home I'd ever known. My house. My name was still on the mailbox, right under the chipped brass numbers. 1442. I stared at those digits as if they might rearrange themselves into cents. I walked up the drive clutching my tote from work for returned library books and a peanut butter sandwich I'd forgotten to eat. Was this some kind of neighborhood mix-up? A filming crew? Then I saw men in gray jumpsuits carrying my grandmother's Oak Hope chest down the porch steps. One of them was whistling. How do you whistle while prying open someone's childhood? Excuse me? My voice came out lighter than it felt. Where are you taking that? The whistler shrugged. Just following the work order, ma'am. He pronounced ma'am like a period. Final. Inside, the hallway looked ransacked but methodical. Picture frames wrapped, rolled rugs stacked like bodies. I reached for the banister, half expecting it to vanish. Every footstep echoed. The piano was already gone, leaving a pale rectangle on the hardwood, sun-bleached proof that something huge had been ripped out. Mom's favorite diffuser still puffed lavender oil on the console table, ridiculous in its calm. My entire adolescence smelled of that lavender. Breakups, AP exam all-nighters, Dad's funeral. There it was, helpful as ever, politely masking catastrophe. I chased the first stranger I could corner, a lanky guy taping my high school yearbook shut. Who hired you? He checked the clipboard. Owner of record, Patricia Owens. My mother. Owner. Record. 3 words. A guillotine. Didn't a sale take months? Inspections, signatures, the parade of real estate photos where you hide the litter box? I'd lived here uninterrupted since birth. Where was the for sale sign? The open house cookies? Had the neighborhood slept through all of that? Or had I? Keys jingled. Mom stepped in wearing her red trench coat, the coat she saved for important errands. Behind her, a real estate agent in patent heels floated like a shadow. Mom's gaze slid over me, quick as a barcode scan. You're early. Her tone suggested I'd barged into her yoga class, not my own eviction. What is happening? My throat pulsed. Why are my things in a truck? She smoothed the trench belt. Olivia, honey, it's complicated. We'll talk tonight. Complicated? I laughed, thin and sour. The chest going down the driveway isn't complicated. It's gone. The agent cut in, sing-song. Congratulations, Ms. Owens. Funds cleared this morning. Clean escrow, 30-day close. She offered Mom a blue folder. Inside, I glimpsed my father's signature. Dad, 6 years dead, tucked beside Mom's fresh pen strokes. Forged? Copied? My heartbeat pounded in my temples, so loudly, I thought the movers could hear. Dad didn't sign that. I whispered. He can't. Mom snapped the folder shut. Let's not be dramatic. It's perfectly legal. Perfectly legal? Is betrayal legal if the paperwork's neat? I grabbed the folder. She inked back. Paper sliced my finger. A bright line of blood dotted the laminate. That sliver of pain felt like truth, a proof of life even if everything else was staging. Where am I supposed to sleep tonight? I asked. She glanced at the agent, then at her watch. Your room at Megan's is still available, isn't it? Megan, my older sister, the golden one who moved out at 18. The implication stung. Olivia, 28, still haunting the nursery like a stubborn ghost. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, why would you sell our house while I was still living here? The rhetorical question tasted bitter. Why not tell me? Mom's smile was practiced. You wouldn't have understood. Besides, this place is too big for us now. Us. There was no us, just her deciding. Another mover brushed past carrying the ceramic cookie jar shaped like a cat, the jar I'd painted when I was 9. He nearly dropped it on the threshold. I lunged, caught it, felt the cool glaze against my palms. Some ridiculous reflex told me to say, be careful. Protect the object even as the history around it burned. Outside, Neighbors slowed their cars, rubbernecking the scene. Did they know? Had they been inside, nodding at granite countertops while I was alphabetizing returns at the library? I pictured strangers touring my bedroom, skimming fingers along the wall dent for my first poster tack, marveling at closet space, saying, "It feels so open." Mom placed a hand on my shoulder, light, managerial. "Let's not make this harder. We have a schedule." A schedule. My life had become a timetable she'd printed without my input. I stepped back, cat jar cradled like something alive. Everything blurred. The truck, the trench coat, the lavender diffuser still puffing civilly. I heard myself ask, how do you forgive someone who doesn't think they did anything wrong? Nobody answered. The whistler blew one last bar. The hope chest disappeared into the truck's throat. A slam, a padlock snap. In that moment, I realized the house wasn't being emptied. It was being erased, one memory at a time, with professional efficiency. Mom's phone buzzed. She turned away to answer, voice bright. "Yes, we'll be out by 6. She meant I'll be out by 6. I looked at the cat jar, at the crimson smear on the blue folder, at the movers hoisting boxes labeled Olivia, attic. And I understood something colder than betrayal. My mother had planned this with surgical care, counting on my silence, on my habit of coming home late and not asking questions. But now I had one question that wouldn't stay silent. What did she trade for all of this? And was I ever part of that bargain? I set the jar on the porch rail, breathing ragged. My fingers still bled, a thin ribbon curling toward my wrist. Proof I was awake. The truck's engine roared. The agent waved. Mom adjusted her coat like the heroine of some triumph. The house loomed behind them, hollowed out, but I could still hear echoes. Birthday songs, stair creaks, Dad's laugh bouncing off the walls. Could they hear it too? Or was I the only one cursed with perfect recall? The engine swallowed the street. Somewhere in the blind spot of my mind, a new terror sprouted. If she could sell the house without blinking, what else could she strip from my life before I even noticed it missing? I didn't have an answer, but the question alone felt like thunder. I didn't go to Megan's that night. Instead, I drove in circles for an hour, clutching the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I passed the grocery store, where Mom used to buy cake, mix on birthdays. The florist where Dad always picked up lilies for her on anniversaries. All these places that once meant something, suddenly just buildings. Backdrops to a story I wasn't part of anymore. Eventually, I pulled into a motel off Route 14. The kind of place with buzzing neon and burnt coffee in the lobby. Room 108. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners, and the bathroom light flickered like a warning. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my work clothes, staring at the motel's welcome packet like it held instructions for surviving this new reality. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, feeling stupid for not seeing it sooner. I'd been living in that house rent-free for 3 years. After Dad died, I moved back in to help. Meals, lawn, bills, companionship. That's what she called it. Just until I get my bearings, she said. But she'd gotten hers. She'd moved on. Quietly. Strategically. Around 10, Megan called. "Mom said you freaked out. What's going on?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She sold the house. While I was still living there. Pause. Okay. But she's been talking about downsizing for months. Talking to you, maybe. Not to me. She said you knew, that you just didn't want to deal with it. And there it was, the second betrayal. I wanted to scream into the phone. Instead, I said, "She forged Dad's signature, Meg." Silence. Then, that's a serious accusation, Liv. It's a serious situation. She's our mom. I hung up. I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying the scene over and over. The movers, the agent, Mom's cold efficiency. How long had she been planning this? And why now? The next morning, I went to the county records office. I needed to know. I needed to see it in writing. The clerk, a woman with brittle nails and a tired smile, found the deed within minutes. Filed 6 weeks ago. Finalized yesterday. 6 weeks. That meant while Mom was making me dinner, asking about my day, commenting on my work stress, she already had a buyer. I skimmed the paperwork. Seller, Patricia Owens. Buyer, Claire and Michael Santoro. Purchase price $712,000. Near the bottom, I saw it. My dad's signature, dated 2 months ago. But Dad died 6 years ago. I asked the clerk, "Isn't that illegal?" She frowned. "Could be. Depends. If it's an old signature pulled from a previous authorization, it gets messy." Messy. That word again. Like my life had become a drawer of tangled wires no one wanted to deal with. I left with a copy of the deed and a folder full of rage. Back at the motel, I called a lawyer I found on Google. He sounded half asleep. "You'd need to prove intent to defraud," he mumbled. "Forgery cases are tough, especially with family." Of course they were. Families lie best when they do it with love. 3 days later, Megan texted me a photo. The living room, newly staged. The Santoros had moved in. I recognized the rug. Mom had sold it with the house. "Looks nice," she wrote. No apology. Just a photo, and that. I didn't reply. I was disappearing. Not just from the house, but from their reality. I kept thinking about Dad. He built that house from scratch. Laid the bricks himself with a buddy from the firehouse. He stained the porch rail with me one summer when I was 10. I got dizzy from the fumes, and he made me lemonade and said, "A home is where you sweat for someone else." Was that all it was worth to her now? Just a pile of equity. I needed answers. So I showed up at her condo. It smelled like new carpet and citrus cleaner. Sterile. Expensive. Cold. She opened the door in yoga pants and a sweater I'd never seen. "Olivia, you can't just show up. I'm not here to scream. I just want to know why." She sighed, stepping aside. "Tea." I laughed. "Sure. Poison it while you're at it." She didn't respond. We sat at her glossy, white table. I placed the deed copy between us. Dad's name. 2 months ago. She didn't flinch. "It's from an old refinance. He gave me power of attorney before the cancer got bad. It's legal." "Legal isn't moral, Mom." She stirred her tea. "You were stuck. You needed a push. I gave you one." "A push? You think I wanted to live like that forever?" she snapped. "You moping around, filling the house with books, talking to your dead father like he'd walk through the door again?" The words hit like punches. "That was my home," I said. "My life. It was mine too, and I needed to let it go. You should thank me." "Thank her?" I stood. "You could have told me, and you would have begged me not to. I couldn't risk it." "Couldn't risk me." I left. This time I didn't take the cat jar. I left it in the motel room. Let someone else inherit the mess. Because I wasn't going to keep collecting memories she'd already cashed out. 3 weeks passed. I didn't call. Neither did she. Megan tried once more, texting. "She's still your mother." I stared at the screen until it went black. What does that even mean? Still your mother? Like a title someone keeps after they burn the whole village down. I found a room on Craigslist. Shared. Kitchen month-to-month lease. No closet doors, no heating, but it was mine. I started labeling things. Not in sharp but mentally. This mug is mine. This lamp is mine. This air is mine. There's something humiliating about starting over in your late 20s because someone you trusted made a unilateral decision. You feel like a child who lost their backpack on the first day of school. Except the backpack was your life, and your mother set it on fire. I kept thinking about the kitchen drawer back home, third one from the left. The one that always jammed. It held everything. Batteries, menus, rubber bands, Dad's old Swiss Army knife, my spare house key. I wondered if the Santoros had emptied it, or just dumped it straight into the trash. Some nights, I drive past the old house and park across the street. They'd painted the porch blue. Hung Win Team. Put a welcome mat outside. It looked like a magazine cover. It looked like betrayal. One time, I saw their daughter, maybe 6, bouncing on the porch swing Dad built. The swing had been ours. He built it for me. and now it held someone else's child, squealing into the dusk like the world had never broken anyone's heart. The anger became a companion. Not rage, just this cold, silent passenger that sat with me in the car, in the library, in the shower. Sometimes I imagined confronting her again, saying everything I hadn't. You could have asked. You could have honored his memory. You could have treated me like a human being. But I didn't, because I knew how it would go. She'd smile that tight-lipped smile, offer tea, call it closure. Closure is a myth people sell to avoid sitting with discomfort. Instead, I started doing something else. I began digging. First, into the sale records. I found out that 2 weeks before the house closed, she'd transferred a chunk of the proceeds, $120,000, to a trust in Megan's name. None for me. She hadn't just sold the house. She distributed the remains like an inheritance, while I was still alive, still there. Then I checked Dad's will. I pulled the last certified copy from the county archives. It named both of us, me and Megan, as equal heirs. Equal. But the trust documents said otherwise. The money was split for the benefit of Megan Owens only, under the sole discretion of Patricia Owens. Meaning Mom held the keys, and she'd chosen. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I called a second lawyer, a real one. I paid for the consultation with 2 maxed-out credit cards. She listened, really listened. Then she said, "There may be grounds here, especially if you were a co-resident with a legitimate claim of tenancy and the estate assets were misallocated." Plain English, she might have screwed up. I filed an injunction, not because I wanted the house back. It was tainted now. I wanted truth. I wanted recorded truth. That's all the powerless have sometimes. The process was slow. Letters, filings, court dates. Mom ignored the first notice, then the second. Then, finally, her lawyer called mine. They wanted to settle. No court. No press. They offered $40,000. I declined, because it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the erasure. The way she'd wiped me from the narrative like I'd never lived there at all. 6 months after it all started, I sat across from her in a mediation room. Neutral ground. Neutral tones. A box of tissues on the table, like anyone would cry honestly in front of a mediator. She looked older, smaller, like guilt had shrunk her frame. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't care if you did." Silence. She offered to dissolve Megan's trust and split the proceeds equally, plus a written acknowledgement that Dad's will had been ignored in error. I signed, not for peace, but for record, for truth, so that when someone someday told me, "She's still your mother," I could say yes. And this is what she did. A month later, the check arrived. $148,672.36. It came in a plain envelope, no note. Just cold ink on a cashier's check and a letter from the law firm confirming the dissolution of the trust and the agreed-upon split. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't feel like money. It felt like bones, like something exhumed. That night, I sat on the floor of my tiny room, surrounded by the few things I'd kept. A stack of journals, a single framed photo of Dad, the teacup with a chip on the rim I'd saved from the motel. And I cried. Not because I was sad, but because the numbness had finally cracked. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about finally being seen. About proof that I hadn't imagined everything. That I was part of that house. That I did matter. Even if it took a courtroom and a lawyer's letterhead to say so. I used the money to start a new life. Not some dramatic, eat, pray, love fantasy. I paid off my student loans. Bought a reliable used car. Rented a small studio with working heat and a deadbolt that clicked like safety. I enrolled in a counseling program. Part-time. Nights. Not because I wanted to fix myself, but because I needed to understand how people break. Especially the ones we love. I didn't talk to Mom for a long time. Not out of spite, just exhaustion. I'd spent too many years holding my breath around her. learning to anticipate her mood, learning to minimize myself to keep the peace. Peace is worthless if it costs you your voice. One day, 6 months later, she emailed. Subject: update. The body was short. She'd sold her condo. Was moving to Arizona. No forwarding address. Just one line at the end. I hope one day you'll understand why I did what I did. I stared at that sentence for a while. Then I hit delete. I don't need to understand her. That's the lie they tell us, that healing means finding empathy for the person who cut you open. Sometimes healing is just stitching yourself shut and walking away. I still pass the old house sometimes. The Santoros planted roses out front. It looks like a place where no one ever screamed into a pillow at 2 a.m., where no one ever had to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. But I know better. Houses remember, even when people forget. The porch swing is gone now. Maybe it broke. Maybe they never knew who built it. But I remember. I remember every creak of those floorboards. Every echo of Dad's laugh in the hallway. Every quiet night I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was the problem. I wasn't. I was just the witness. The inconvenient truth. The daughter who stayed too long. I'm not angry anymore, but I don't forgive her. Not because I can't, because she never asked. And how do you forgive someone who never once said, "I'm sorry I hurt you"? You don't. You move on anyway. You rebuild. You learn that strength isn't silence. It's speaking up, even if your voice shakes. Even if no one claps for you when you finally walk out the door. The day I boxed up the last of my things in that cramped little room, I paused to look around. It was barely 200 square feet, and yet, in that space, I had unraveled my entire identity and built something new. No more treading lightly. No more making excuses for people who only saw me when I was useful. A friend from work helped me move into the new place, a modest one-bedroom with creaky floors and good light. When we finished unloading the last box, she said, "Feels like a fresh start." And for the first time in years, I agreed. I hung up Dad's photo on a nail above the kitchen counter. It was taken before the cancer, before the weight loss and hospital beds. He was holding me on his shoulders in front of the house, our house. His smile was so wide. Mine, even wider. I looked at that picture every morning, not out of grief, but gratitude. He was the one who made it feel like a home. Not the walls. Not the mortgage. Not her. I still think about what Mom said in mediation. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It's wild how people think that's enough." As if unintentional harm leaves no scars. Intentions don't move boxes out of bedrooms while you're at work. Intentions don't reroute inheritances, erase your name from deeds, or tell your sister. She'll understand eventually. No, actions do that. And I finally understood something she probably never will. Love without respect is just control dressed up in sentiment. I used to ask myself all the time, what did I do wrong? Was I too passive? Too slow to move out? Too much of a reminder of the past she wanted to forget? I asked those questions like prayers, begging the silence for an answer. Now I know. I didn't do anything wrong. She just made choices. And I stopped letting those choices define me. When people talk about letting go, they act like it's a moment. Like one deep breath and poof, pain gone. But letting go isn't one thing. It's every damn day. Every time I walk past the aisle with the lavender oil and don't flinch. Every time I ignore her birthday on the calendar and don't spiral with guilt. Every time someone says, "I'm sure she meant well," and I smile without explaining. Letting go is quiet, and it's powerful. Last week, I got a letter. No return address. No signature. Just a postcard with a photo of the Grand Canyon and 5 words written on the back. "I hope you're doing okay." I placed it in the drawer with the deed copy, the legal letter, and the photo of me and Dad. A file not of memories, but evidence. Not for anyone else. Just for me. To remind myself that it did happen. That I survived it. That I'm more than what she tried to erase. People say home is where the heart is. But I think they're wrong. Home is where you are respected. Where your presence matters. Where the walls don't shift when you're inconvenient. She took the house. I took everything else.